Cringetober is a yearly drawing challenge, and I've never done it. Basically, you follow a prompt list and you draw something cringe every single day. Now, it is no longer October 2025, but you know what? I got to it when I got to it, and it's gonna be okay. There's no rules to this thing, at least not ones I'm following, so there you go. Now, I do want to say, I start my art process, at least lately, because I'm kind of rusty, I start drawing on my phone, and then I transfer that to my iPad. My speed paints will start on IBIS Paint X from my phone before moving on to the Procreate version. The first prompt on the list was overpowered, so I drew Shaggy, of course. That is referencing a certain meme about Shaggy, but even if you don't know it, like, you have to admit, he can eat like I've never seen. That has to be some kind of superpower. It's really impressive. So I decided to channel kind of a serious look from him. I wanted it to give like intimidation. Though looking back, if I were to do it again, I think I would have done maybe more of a full body pose, maybe something that does exude a bit more of his power rather than just this kind of blank stare. I do still like it though. I prioritized a lot of texture in this, a lot of stylization. Definitely one of the lower ones on my list now, having done more of the drawings, but as a starting off point, I think it's fine. I think it's cute. Weird colors was the second prompt, which is vague and up for interpretation on which color is weird or what pattern would be weird. I thought about inverted colors. I thought about a photo of a dress and nobody could decide what color it actually was. But in the end, I decided what is weird would be something that is found in nature but with unnatural colors and patterns. I drew a bunny, basically. I drew a bunny, but it's green. I ended up liking the pattern I made for this piece, so that's actually in the background of this entire video. This drawing is of course not realistic. The proportions are still stylized and everything, but as far as what I usually draw, this was leaning a bit more towards reality than usual, eyelashes and all. And I'll say it, the colors, they're weird. The third prompt was chibi art, which doesn't seem too far from what I usually draw, but for whatever reason, I did have a really hard time with this piece. I found that it was just looking really flat the whole time, and the colors were not doing it for me, and the background was not doing it for me, and the line art was not doing it for me, and the concept was fine, but not the most creative thing. I made a little ice cream girl. I think part of my frustration with this illustration was that I pictured her as being mint chocolate chip ice cream, but in the end, it's strawberry. And I don't know when I decided to do that, why I decided to do that, but I'm feeling lazy. Instead of going back to change it, I'd have to change the other colors as well to make it cohesive. And that just sounds like a lot of work, and frankly, it doesn't really sound worth it. This illustration is just a meh for me, which is okay. They can't all be as awe-inspiring as Shaggy. I think the little cherry she's levitating on her palm, that's a nice touch. So that's the positive thing I'll say about it. Guys, we're getting kind of crazy now, because the next prompt was Fursona. Anytime I have done anything Fursona-like has just been drawing myself as a little kitty. But I didn't want to draw myself because I'm not a narcissist, and I decided I wanted to draw a goofy orange cat instead, which is my boyfriend's color, if you are a cat. To even include the sketch in this recording, it was kind of diabolical of me because I drew the simplest little circle with little triangle ears and called it a day. But that's because I had a pretty clear vision of what I wanted going into it. The contrast between the simplified cat and the actual photos in this illustration, I think were pretty effective. But in terms of this cat actually being an accurate persona for my boyfriend, I have to say that is kind of a flop because the likeness is just not there. This cat looks unhinged. She is chugging that radioactive Mountain Dew Zero Sugar in a way that's ungodly, which I do like for the illustration, but it definitely does not capture the energy of who I was trying to emulate. Prompt 5, favorite cliche. For the prompt, I started with the idea of the sharing a bed trope or being forced to share a bed trope, but it wasn't really getting my gears turning, so I pivoted. My favorite villains are the really pathetic ones, or ones that are sympathetic in some way, that you just can't help but like them. Doofenshmirtz comes to mind, and I went with someone that emulates this trope well, which is the Lego Batman's Joker. The whole movie, he is just pining over Batman and struggling with the not reciprocated feelings of being someone's number one antagonist, being someone's absolute worst enemy. I really like the color combo of green and purple, but it can get muddy pretty quickly, especially if you're doing any layering over top of it with an overlay or a multiply layer or something like that. The shadows can look a bit diluted and a little bit muddy pretty quick, but I really enjoyed rendering this piece. It was adding a lot of textured lines just to bring some life into it, which I think it accomplished. I did struggle with the background quite a bit, but in the end I did a pretty simple tone indicator, if you will, with those sad broken hearts, but then also the jagged lines to really show his turmoil, to really show my favorite cliche, which is a villain just being pathetic. The next prompt we're going to talk about is musical, which is nice, but I'm not a theater kid. I'm not like other girls, I'm worse, because instead of doing a normal musical, I drew The Greatest Showman. That's not to say The Greatest Showman isn't a regular musical, it's just a little bit random, I suppose. But the only musical I've seen in person, or stage musical I've seen, is Wicked, outside of my high school performances. And Wicked is just a little too mainstream right now. I'm trying to be niche, you guys. So I went with this movie, even though I have seen people make fun of it online. Listen, they have the Wolverine in it. He's singing gorgeously. Zac Efron is mogging, and Zendaya is stunting on them. So yeah, I liked the movie, and I decided to make Zendaya the focal point of this piece. She is doing a little trick. I don't know if that's called trapeze with the big circle, but whatever it is, it looks pretty ethereal. And because this movie takes place sometime back in the day, I decided to make it look a little bit retro to the best of my ability. I liked the flat colors I used, but by the time I got to the shading and was adding all those little dots to add dimension, I think the coloring did get away from me a little bit. So because of that, I don't think the effect was as strong as it could have been. Anime was the next prompt, and spoiler alert, I had to draw it twice because my first rendition was actually nightmare fuel. I don't think it was that bad, I'm being a little bit dramatic, but it definitely was not up to my expectations. It wasn't anime from the get-go, and then by the time it came to doing the actual line work, any reference I had on hand, I just ditched and started doing my own thing. Like, I was just remixing, which is a bold choice because I only got into anime in adulthood, and by that point I'd already been drawing for years, so actually drawing in the style is still pretty foreign to me. I tried to give her this look of horror, and she just ended up looking like a yassified Bratz doll, and the color was terrible and desaturated because I just plopped it under the shading I'd already done. I spent too much time trying to fix it whenever I should have known from the sketch that this was not going to turn out well. I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be what I envisioned, which is really why I think I don't like the drawing. But we don't give up, so I just went ahead and drew it again. Now this one I drew like as a very final piece. I went back and decided to give this another go, so the canvas is accidentally a different size. I don't know how that happened, but as you can see, I actually left my reference just to make sure I had that right on hand. I used Jujutsu Kaisen as the reference because that's a very anime looking anime to me, and I liked this one photo where Nobara is holding that mirror, and I decided to just copy that pose entirely. The character I'm drawing is actually my Sona, and that was a big part of my decision to go ahead and redo this from scratch because I didn't get my PNGs done in time to be a real YouTuber yet, so this was really going to be the first introduction to my Sona, to this design, and I wanted it to look a little bit less terrifying. The design is not solidified, and there is a little bit of lore as to why she has that starfish on her face, but all you need to know about it right now is that I'm dead. Canonically, my Sona is dead because she drowned in the ocean, and now she's being puppeteered by this magical starfish that just found her in the right time and took on over like a little parasite. It sounds darker than it's meant to be. It's kind of more so about this starfish experiencing humanity for the first time and going on these adventures and experiencing things never imaginable from the perspective of a starfish. Though I did try to do a background, I don't think it ended up being super successful, especially if you look at Jujutsu Kaisen's backgrounds in the actual anime. Those are gorgeous. Looking at it now, this also kind of reminds me of Teen Titans, like the original animated series. I don't know if that's actually close to what it looks like, but something about it feels almost nostalgic in that way. And so for that, I am a fan. The next prompt is core/aesthetic, which would be like cottagecore. Frutiga era is what I'm seeing online quite a bit, or there are more fashion focused ones like whimsy goth. So all of those were in my mind when I started this piece, but in the end I went with weirdcore or dreamcore. I'm not sure if this leans more towards one or the other, or even if one or the other are that different from each other. Either way, that was the inspiration going into it. This ended up being more of a collage than a drawing, which I was okay with. I think the end result is cool and not something I would have done without this prompt list, I don't think. But those elements for the collage I found on Canva. I use that program to scrapbook and I pay for the premium version. A lot of this ended up being, adding shadows, adding lighting to make all of the pieces that go together. The whole thing was supposed to be kind of unsettling and definitely dreamlike. Next up, we are doing indie game, and I went with doing something related to the game Stardew Valley because that's definitely the indie game I play the most. Though I didn't want to do any of the actual characters from Stardew Valley because that is a video idea going forward. So instead, I made the main character in this fake game the mascot for the developer himself, Concerned Ape, and I thought about if I were to hypothetically make a game as a non-developer, as someone totally outside of that field, doing one of those kind of crappy dress-up games would be really fun. Like, I'm thinking girlsgogames.com, where you are dressing up the non-copyrighted version of Cinderella, and it's just a really simple flash game, but it entertained me for hours as a kid. I drew Concerned Ape with his iconic sunglasses, though I did change the position because I really don't like how they grip the side of his head in the actual sprite. It just makes me so uncomfortable. I mean, look at that grasp. And I gave him a nice little muscle tee and some bootcut jeans, some boots, and then his necklace is an actual piece of gold from Stardew Valley. So he is money. I went with having the selection right beside him where you have the choice of all these different hats, shirts, shorts, shoes, and accessories. Usually the options in these games were pretty limited. Doing only 3 shirts, especially for a masculine character, kind of felt accurate. I do understand my choice to make the Concerned Ape mascot like kind of a typical masculine character. I even gave him a pretty muscular figure, but I do think maybe sticking with having him be this more monstrous creature could have been an interesting concept too, and then just have the rest of it look like a normal dress-up game. But I didn't end up going with that, so we won't dwell on it too much. What I will dwell on is the fact that I didn't give him a hat accessory at all. I just totally missed that, and I think it's devastating. The 10th prompt is unnecessarily complex, which, not to devastate you guys, but this is gonna be my last drawing, at least in this video. The rest of the list didn't really tempt me to keep going. I thought 10 was a good number, and like I said in the beginning, I'm not here to follow the rules, I'm just here to draw some cringe stuff, so yeah. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but for the last couple drawings, I did not sketch first on my phone. So that also really shows my bad boy energy because I'm not even following my own formatting. But about the drawing, what is a complex thing? I considered a really complex outfit. I considered an alien that has some kind of complex anatomy or even another pattern similar to Green Bunny. But also anything mechanical is complex. So I drew a robot. He's sitting at a desk, and at one point in the sketch he did have a cigarette in his mouth, but then I decided this guy is actually a teacher now because I wanted to put some posters behind him. So I took away his cigarette and I took away his swag. I tried to just add really as many details as I could, which I could have pushed farther than the end product for sure, but some context for you guys, I haven't done digital art in about 2 years, hence me drawing on my phone with my finger first to sketch, just because the thought of sketching right on the iPad was really daunting for whatever reason. So while this isn't the most unnecessarily complex drawing, this took me a lot longer and it felt complex to draw. So I tried to keep the line art pretty thin, and wherever I could, especially by the time I get to the coloring, just added some more rendering. Even the paper on this teacher's desk has a handwritten assignment of some kind that I made in-house, shockingly. I overlaid real images to add more texture to the drawing or add more details just wherever I could. The robot himself ended up getting this leopard pattern that I imported in from a photo. The background is an imported photo. I added wood texture to the desk, I added a dot texture to the desk, added a basketball to the poster, petals to the flower, petals to the poster. Just whenever I had an idea of what I could add, I did it. I didn't want every single piece to be an overlaid image, so the wires are still exposed and the paper and pencil are just what I drew. The last thing I did with this piece was do a window shadow / light effect, which I cannot for the life of me decide if I like or not. I do think it brings the piece together, but it almost makes it look less complicated in a way. I think it tones things down. Now, as someone who is months late to this challenge, as someone who only drew the first 10 prompts, and as someone who kind of skimped out on a couple of them, I definitely recommend doing this challenge because it got me to draw. It got me to think of things in a creative way. It got me to interpret the prompts as something that actually interests me, as something that I would like to draw. But that's all I have for you. If you feel strongly about me drawing something or following a different challenge, you can go ahead and comment it. I'm sure I'll see it. This has been Shay, and this has been Creative.